I figured out the simplest scalping strategy that turns losing traders into profitable ones. Not only has this strategy worked for me, but it's also worked for other traders who have tried it out and they have turned into being consistent over the long run. I've compiled a ton of real trade examples, so by the end of this video, you will know exactly how to execute this strategy just like these other profitable traders. To give you a super quick overview before we dive into the nuts and bolts of how you can consistently execute this pattern yourself every day, all I do is when the US market opens, I look at the first 30 to 60 minutes. All I'm looking for is a clean support and resistance level, and then I look for a few key patterns. For example, right here, there's a nice double top. All I do then is I see a nice candlestick pattern, and then I enter in on a trade short, betting that the market is gonna go down, and then from there, I let the market play out. I've noticed over time that the market consistently has a reversal in the first 30 to 60 minutes of a trading day. And so what this strategy does is it allows you to take advantage of that reversal, and then coupling that with looking for key areas of resistance or support, you're able to essentially ping pong the market between those levels, capturing a big potential profit for a smaller amount of risk. And this is all I do every day. This is the only thing I look for every single day. And it allows my trading to be super simple and straightforward so that you can go into every day with a plan and know how to execute it. Instead of what I did before when I was unprofitable, I was trying to match what the market was doing, and that just was not profitable. And I know from teaching a ton of people how to do this, that's the exact same way they feel as well. Let me walk you through how I entered and found this trade. And so initially, what I'm seeing is you can see that the market had a nice methodical trend up here. And then this bearishness right here showed me that, okay, something's changed. We've broken this uptrend. That's a massive thing that I like to look for. And then also this big trend line right here is drawn from a bigger picture, where on a 15 or 5 minute, I can see that the market consistently is coming up to this level. It comes up here again, it's likely to continue lower. Obviously, if I see the 3-line strike pattern that I like to see and a couple of other factors. And so seeing that it had this big bearishness here, that was a great confirmation to say, okay, the momentum in this market is switching. You always want to take that into account. We came down here, had a little bit of a bounce, showed, some momentum. Essentially, you could even say this is a 50% pullback from this area. You can see it's literally in the middle of that box. The market likes to do pullbacks like that are literally halfway of the move it just had. And so it moved down this far, it pulled back halfway, that's what this little spike here is, and then it sold off. And for me, this isn't a super picture perfect and really nice looking 3-line strike pattern, but for me, I saw, okay, there's some movement up here, there's this big attempt to go higher, and then, it's essentially in this little mini channel, and then this big candlestick here, especially with the fact that it wicks higher right here, this little wick right here, it's essentially like a micro double top. And then I get in, I actually got in down here a little bit because it was moving pretty quickly, but the signal there is at the candlestick close right there. And so that's what I used to jump in on this. And then of course, put the stop up here. Doesn't need to go all the way up here above this trend line. What we're trying to do is risk a tight amount and then have the big picture potential for the market to really start moving in our favor. And so in this trade, I think I'm risking like $500, but that's why you can use this kind of in any account size. You can scale it up because again, trading is super scalable. You just use and find one pattern that works and then increase the money. You don't need to try and find more patterns to make more trades. That's what kind of kept me from being profitable initially. And so you'll see here actually, once the market essentially made a pullback here, right here, and then moved down, I moved my stop loss to break even because I want to kind of tighten up the trade and get out if it's gonna pull back on me. Sometimes the market's just gonna be choppy and all over the place. I don't wanna trade in that. I wanna be in trades, and I've noticed these trades will work out pretty cleanly in your favor if they're gonna work out. And so from there, it starts moving down pretty quickly. I'm trying to see, okay, is there this downtrend line that I can kind of expect the market to pull back to? And again, that's kind of thinking about, okay, how am I managing this? as you are trading, you want to be thinking what to do next based on logic, not, okay, I'm up, almost $3,000. I'm really nervous. This is a lot of money. I need to get out. Or what if this keeps going? I could be up 5,000, 10,000, right? You can't let your emotions kind of control what you do. You need to have a logical plan to trade with. And so once this kind of got rocketing in one direction, it gets really far away from the trend line, and I don't want to hold through a pullback. At this point, that's a big pullback to hold through for it breaking that trend line. And so I start using kind of more of a tighter trailing stop loss with kind of previous candlestick highs. And you can also see there is this blue box down here. That's a support level. And so big picture, I've looked at, okay, well, the market's already bounced here a couple times. If we come down here again, I'm gonna expect that we're gonna bounce or slow down. And this is a really fast moving, unhealthy move, which is great to be in if you're in it, but it's likely to snap back at some point. And I wanna be out when it's gonna snap back. And so that's why I have kind of a tighter trailing stop loss. And you can see it's starting to snap back a little bit. And I wanna give it a little wiggle room because these things can break through a support level and keep going lower. But in this case, it kind of starts to chop here, it makes a double bottom, and it essentially knocks me out here. But I get, about $3,500, $3,200 worth of profit. So now that you have a good understanding of what I look for every trade, I want to zoom through a couple more trade entries so you can get this repetition down. Because at the end of the day, trading is very repetitive, but it's all slightly different. Every trade entry has something slightly different about it. There's gonna be something different to learn and take away from every different trade entry. So when you try and do this yourself, you have that pattern recognition in your mind. We're gonna jump into one more pretty in-depth walkthrough so you really have a good understanding of the trade entries. And then also, I'm gonna show you a couple trades of doing this on a small account. You can do this starting with $50 to $100. I had a whole challenge where I took $50 and turned it into over $3,000 using this strategy. And now let me kind of give you a deep dive into the checklist I use for each one of these trade entries and how to know why the fair value gap is gonna really reverse versus, before a lot of people will try and see that fair value gap and kind of buy here looking for it to go long. And sometimes that'll happen and I'll avoid those trades because of a few key factors. You need just the basics of this fair value gap to be popping off. And the biggest thing is having a bunch of them compared to the trade today I took. That'll really increase your confidence because when the market whips up that high, that fast, it's really likely to give it back up because of, remember, that imbalance in the market. That's what really makes this so powerful and allows you to, when you trade, to enter in and risk a smaller amount or have a good risk reward ratio to where you can be risking, $100, $1,000, doesn't matter what your size is, but you're going for 3 times your risk. That's a massive key when it comes to trading. For me, I have found that's way easier to be successful at. And so kind of the first thing is you want those fair value gap indicators. And then second is coming up to this resistance zone. You have to have a key level to be trading these off of. You do not want to be just trading them randomly. Here's a clean example of really just right before this trade happened is where this is big indicator of overextension, right? But you can see there is, if we kind of zoom out, there's not really a good clean level. There's kind of something here, but if you really zoom out, that's middle of the range. The good extreme level is down here. I'm not gonna go over how to draw key levels in this video. I'll link a video up here on how to do that properly. But that is why, and a reason why you wanna stay away from something like this, because there isn't a good zone to reverse off of. You need to be waiting for there to be a really clean zone like this. And then going into a 1-minute chart, because I like to trade on a 1-minute chart right when the market opens. I'll take a 5-minute entry a little later sometimes, or if the market's a little slower. But in this case, I took it on a 1-minute because it made a really nice setup. Now, another huge factor in this trade is there was timing. I have 3 kind of timing windows I look for, and the window this one aligned up was 30 minutes after the market opens. I constantly see reversals happen at that time. And so this is another catalyst on what makes this a really good setup. And then kind of the final thing is, you have this uptrend that's broken, but a big thing is looking at the structure of the highs and the lows, the swings. And so here, in an uptrend, it's making higher highs and higher lows. And so I need to see that stop and it make a lower high. This is a massive key factor here. And so from that point, that's when I look to jump in the trade. Sometimes I'll look and say, okay, I like a 5 minute better, but the 5 minute kind of just chopped here pretty good too. So when I was actually trading this took a long time to get going. On a 5 minute, it looks pretty simple, but on a 1 minute, it took about 20-30 minutes to get going. And when I was trading larger than normal size, I put $1,400 of risk on this trade. My kind of normal large size is 1,000. And because this was such a good setup, I did a little extra because of how confident I was in it. And so it makes just the waiting even that much worse. And so eventually though, it punched down here, moved to break even and set a limit order here at 2 times my risk. Essentially a good target is the bottom of the main move. That's the easy money if you ask me. And then after that, my thought was, okay, I will trail this thing and let it keep going if it's gonna keep going. But if it has a big pullback like it just did, I'm gonna get out and call it a day. And so the first thing, of course, is using those 2 indicators is to see that we're coming up into a key resistance zone. Again, you can draw these yourself based on that other video, or I do have an indicator that does it pretty well automatically. And the second thing, of course, is this move was overextended based on the other overextension indicator. So you have those 2 keys showing up, showing you that this has a high probability to reverse. That is the biggest confidence booster when it comes to trade. And this is what honestly helps me focus on the process as much as possible, is always making sure that you have those 2 keys in place before you even sit down and consider taking a trade. It helps you just avoid all the noise when it comes to trading. And so that's honestly the first thing in the checklist, is having a key reversal zone and having an overextension indicator signal come up. The next thing is having a key reversal pattern. What I like to do is look for either a double top or a head and shoulders, or even in this case, it did essentially a fail breakout here where it broke above the previous extreme high, got a lot of people in excited thinking it was gonna go higher, and then it reversed. And so this candlestick right here gave me a ton of confidence. And then the final confirmation was that it had this little pullback here and then push lower with this big candlestick, confirming a lot of momentum to the downside. And that is where I essentially entered in on my trade and then used my risk reward calculator tool here to put my stop loss up here and target a certain amount of risk. You want to try and keep your risk the same every time. And then as this moves in my favor, I slowly move my stop losses down. And usually the initial target I have for these trades is if it gives back up that overextended move. But you always want to try and let it run a little bit more just in case it's going to keep going farther. So this trade right here had a pretty big spike down, and I closed out right here for pretty much $2,000 in under 15 minutes in the morning. Here's another example, and this is on the flip side, looking for a long. You can see clearly I'm looking at a support level here where the market's bounced once, twice. There was probably another bounce here before on the previous area in the chart that I was looking at. And so I'm already looking for the big picture of the market to come down here and bounce. And to accurately enter and confirm that the market's gonna bounce here is I looked for the market to make essentially it slowed down here, and then it had a strong bullish candlestick here form, and I got in essentially as it was about to finish closing. I got in a couple seconds earlier, but I essentially got in as it created that 3-line strike pattern. And you can see here, it was actually a candlestick after the bottom here. It wasn't right away, but it was still showing me that switch in momentum. And it gave me an accurate entry to enter in at the bottom of the swing, have a tighter stop loss, and then capture the reversal back higher. And so this is super, super powerful for capturing trades like this. You know, every trade is gonna go slightly different. We're gonna go over that massive one here in a minute, but this is still a really nice trade to capture, you know, $400 or $500 worth of profit. Again, just trading 60 minutes in the morning. And so at that point, you know, the market kind of slowed down. I said, okay, I want to get out if it breaks lower because it could just give that swing back up. And that's where I kind of got out at, about $400, and moved on with my day. Now, this is a good example of a trade on a small account. I'm kind of doing a small account challenge right now, and this is on a small account. And so I'm risking $100 here, betting that the market is going to reverse off of this resistance level that I've drawn, and then, you know, betting it to go probably kind of down here. And we'll talk about targets and why that's a good target later. But if it gets down there, that's a good 2-3 times my risk. And on a small account, risking $100, that is a nice profit. And so the first thing that I'm looking for, obviously, is that it comes up to that level first, right? That is the number one key thing to make reversal trading work, is the patience to just wait for the market to come to an extreme and key level. You can even see the market came here and reversed off of this little area right here. You can say, well, you know, it bounced here, it bounced here, it bounced here. And so maybe it bounces here. Maybe I should have got that. You know, maybe you even look at hindsight and say, oh, I'll try and get that next time. But those don't work very often, and they're more likely to cause you to lose money in the long run. It's better to just sit out, kill that noise, and wait for the market to come to these extremes. And then when it's oversold or overbought in this case, you can capture on that strong reversal to the downside. And so the first key that I like to use is after it's kind of hit that level, again, you can see it's not quite in my zone, but again, it's so close, it's good enough. The first thing is making sure that uptrend is broken, because when you're counter trend trading, you don't want to go against a trend because, you know, it might come up to a level here, but it's in an uptrend and it's just going to keep going, right? We don't know, these levels aren't going to hold every time. It's not just blindly sell or buy at these levels. And so that's kind of why I have this uptrend here, is you can see that we had strong bullish candlesticks here, and then it kind of started to break. Is it had a doji here, it had a bearish candle here, and then it made kind of another push higher. And so for me, that's good enough to say, hey, yeah, this strong kind of micro trend right here is broken. And you can see the market's kind of being quick with its reversals. And so I'm okay with thinking that that's a good enough trend break. Certain kind of trends, they'll need something else. But in this case, for this kind of very one-directional, unhealthy trend, it's good in terms of clearing that kind of need for a reversal break. And so after that, my next key that I like to look for is kind of a reversal pattern or reversal candlestick pattern. And so in this case, the market started to show some weakness here with this kind of doji here and this kind of red bar. And it broke that uptrend. And then it made these two candlesticks here, these bullish candlesticks, breaking this previous high. This high right here became a new one. And for me, that said, okay, it's still going higher, but as soon as this big bearish candlestick form right here, this big red one, that to me is showing it almost made a micro failed breakout. It made that kind of trap where it attempted to make a new high, and it did. It made a new high, but barely at all. You know, it didn't make much before this big bearish candlestick came in. And so if I kind of zoom back in the recording and kind of show you that in real time, right now to speed this up a little, once this candlestick finishes forming, I think that's a good signal for me. And I want to get in right there at the low of that candle. So my thought is, okay, I want to get in when it kind of breaks the low of this candle, because to me, that's a strong enough signal that it's likely going to reverse there. And so you can see initially, it kind of starts to go against me and doesn't look great initially. But you know, that's where when things reverse, sometimes they take a little while. The market won't always just reverse on a dime. A lot of times it'll come up like it did, kind of start to settle down and slow and lose some of that momentum and strength, and then it'll give it back up and start going. And so that's what I'm kind of looking for. And so once I entered in there, I moved my stop above this high, because the whole idea is if it comes up here and knocks me out, I'm looking for that kind of quick reversal to fail. And I think if it comes up here, comes back down and keeps going higher, I think that's a stronger uptrend. It's had a healthy pullback if it does that, and then it keeps going higher, and I want to get out. The idea is with trading is you take your stabs, they either work out really quickly and really well right away, or they just don't work out and you move on. If you're trying to force a trade in conditions where it's just not great and not working out, you're gonna lose money if you try and enter in the market over and over. And a lot of the times when the market has a big move like this, kind of like we were talking about earlier, that it's a big area where the market velocity off that area was really big, it's more likely that when the market comes back down there, it's gonna find a bounce. And it's gonna find some buyers and support. And this trade right here is going to dry up and slow down. And I wanna capture my profits here because I'm getting, about 2.5 times my risk on this trade. And that is a great trade to just consistently make money and grow your trading account. And again, that's what you want to start out with. You don't want to be trying to get home runs, make a ton of money. Make your small account grow over time, and then you can 10x this size. I have trades on my channel where this trade would be $2,000 and it's the exact same setup. And so actually at that point, you can see I had my stop loss down there because I was managing it pretty tight because we got down to this other area, and it closed out there and it actually started to reverse, and you can see it started to reverse off that level. So now that we've mainly focused and you have a good understanding of entries, what you need to learn now is how to manage the trades. I have a couple different styles of how I manage them, and you'll start to understand them throughout this section. It can either be going for a fixed profit target or managing the trade fluidly. This is really important to get down and understand because the entries are the most important part, but being able to maximize how much you're getting from every trade is very important for your long-term profitability. And so essentially at this point, this is where I'm thinking, okay, I wanna see a large candlestick here form because that's gonna help me with step 3 and 4 basically. It's gonna show me a double bottom, and then it's also gonna be that strong engulfing candlestick that confirms that. And so right here you can see I'm using essentially a tool to say, okay, if I enter here and my stop loss is here, how much do I want to enter in on the trade? And then where is, my risk reward ratio is going to be. And so essentially, once I wait for that to confirm, I like to let the next candlestick play out a little bit because sometimes a big candlestick like that can have a bit of a pullback before it keeps going higher. Minor detail. But essentially what I'm looking for now is, okay, I'm gonna enter in long at the break of this pattern and as it goes higher. And so what I do is, you actually see there's no order here on the screen, but I've entered in a long here and put my stop loss down here. The only reason why it doesn't show up is actually just because my account on this recording screen wasn't selected for a little while. But if we zoom forward, so you can see I entered in here and I put my stop loss below here, essentially the bottom of that swing. The whole idea of why I put my stop loss there is because I don't want the market to, if the market comes up here, makes a pretty clean higher low, and then comes up and breaks that, I think the trend's gonna continue lower. And so I just want to kind of get out because I'm getting mixed signals. I want the signals for the trade to be clear and for me to jump in on the trade. And so with this trade, I think I'm risking about $800. And so as we move up, I'm looking at a few key factors to manage it. And so to walk you through how I plan to do this is, well, obviously the major swing I'd love to go for is somewhere up here. That would be holding overnight, multiple days. And that's not really what I was looking for today, especially because it's a Friday. It's going into a long weekend actually with a holiday on Monday. Now, obviously you didn't know that, but just looking at the patterns here is, well, the market's starting to kind of slow down. And so there's potential resistance zones here where I think the market could slow down. I also think a big picture, kind of more looking at a 30-minute, is if we look at this, well, the major kind of swing down it had when it started to accelerate was kind of this area right here. And so I would think a good spot would be to give back up to here if it really started to get going. And so that's essentially what I'm doing every time I'm in a trade, is I'm thinking about where are the potential for not necessarily major, you don't necessarily need to be targeting a major swing or a major supply or demand level,
but also looking at these smaller ones, because now that we're in a trade, those can still reverse the market. They're not necessarily where I want to enter in on the market, but they are at a spot where I want to potentially get out or take some of the trade off. And so right here, you can see as the market started to push up here, it's had a really nice move. It's essentially given up this major move down. I have moved my trade to break even. It's really important to take that risk off the table, because going forwards, well, I don't want it to come up here all the way down and I actually end up losing $800 on the day when I was up over $800. That's just kind of, math wise, you gotta kind of go with that. And the helpful part is it had this little micro pullback here. That's when I kind of moved it up. And then from there, in a minute here, I put in a limit order at this high here, because I wanted to say, I don't want to manage it in real time. I want to just get out of half of my trade of one of my contracts out of my two when it punches up to this level. And so right there, you can see it closed. And so I closed off, took about half of my profits there. And then with the idea is that I'm buying at the major support here. I want to see if this will continue higher and I can get even more out of this. But I don't want to be greedy. It's at a definite spot where I think it can slow down. And so I want to take some off. And so that limit order that just showed up there, I put it up here in case we did just skyrocket up there. That was the spot I wanted to take the trade off. At that point, I would have been super happy. I think it would have been 4 times my risk in terms of profit, at least for half of that trade. But going back to the concepts that we talked about, you can see I have a trend line here. And this upwards trend that is going on here is a very unhealthy or one directional trend. And so my thought is I'm okay holding this as long as it holds this trend line. But as soon as it kind of starts to break that, it could pull back in a big way. And at this point, I'm thinking that, hey, this is a great move. I don't want to hold through a big pullback and push higher. I was able to break up my trade into maybe having a smaller amount on here. And so at this point, I was essentially just watching this and saying, okay, I'm gonna get out. And so just to zoom forwards here, is it had a little bit of a bottom here, moved my stop loss up there, and then it eventually broke that right there. And so that's how I take this whole process and turn it into a step-by-step checklist that you can now use for yourself. And to help you consistently execute this strategy, I've created a free 14-page guide that'll walk you through the major patterns that I use to look for reversals, look to enter in on my trades for confirmation every time I look for this strategy. You can download it in the link in the description of this video or using this QR code. I want to see the market kind of start to show kind of a bottoming pattern. Right here, it's basically making higher highs. And so I like this, as this candlestick was a really kind of a big bearish candlestick attempting the market to go lower, and it failed here based on these candlesticks. And so I like the idea of saying, hey, I want to get in long above this candlestick right here, betting that the market is going to go higher. And so I put what is called a buy stop order above it. If the price of the market touches this price, put in a market order. I don't care where you fill me at, just get me in the market. And most of the time you can see it literally just filled at that exact price. But sometimes it can, fill you right here because the market can move pretty fast. But that is the order I like to enter in on most of the time. And you can use a buy limit order that'll get you in below or exactly at that price. But the problem with that is, well, for this example right here, well, the market kind of took off here and you would have felt a lot of FOMO, and because you would have missed out on the trade, and you would have had to wait for and hope that the market comes back down and fills you at that price. And so you can see here quickly, just over a couple candlesticks, I'm already up $1,000 on this trade, risking, I think $500 or $600. And so this is where the power comes into play. Is I'm trading 4 oil futures contracts here, and you can see it's moving in that 0.01 increment, that penny size, compared to the S&P 500 futures that we're just looking at was actually moving in that quarter of a point size, that 0.25. But you can see here clearly that the money is a lot more. And so for me, my strategy is I like to kind of get in when I see, basically you can easily see here is
there was a lot of momentum here. It started to slow down by essentially just seeing that the market kind of started to chop here. And then I look for a few key factors to jump in and catch the momentum to the other side. And so I moved my stop here to break even. And then as it starts to kind of get pretty accelerated here, I like to use kind of the idea that, hey, okay, I'm gonna give it a little bit of wiggle room, but I am gonna move my stop up if it pulls back, because I'm up about $2,000, and you wanna let this thing run if it's gonna run, but you also, you can see like just as it pulled back right here, it can reverse very, very quickly too. And so that's where I really look to, manage my trades. But again, that's come with a lot of practice and experience trading this. My target here, you can see now that we're getting up to here, you can see we're kind of in a support level that I've drawn from previously in the chart. And that's where I'm gonna expect things to slow down. And so you can see I've moved my stop loss up here. It's, we're up a lot more money now. And this is where kind of the power comes into play of using technical analysis with futures. Is you have that leverage and you have that ease of getting in and out of the market, but you also have the simplicity of, you're not having to deal with the complexity of options and other factors that come into play with other assets. And so just to close this out, I'm not gonna go into my strategy too much here. I have a lot more videos on that, but I pretty much get knocked out right there. So now that you know pretty much the nuts and bolts of this strategy, I wanna show you some live trading examples. These are recordings of trades I took and me in real time, not just kind of going back over and kind of explaining a trade I took in the past. This is what it's like in real time. This is super powerful for you to now understand what it's like showing up to the morning, analyzing the market as I see it in real time, entering a trade, managing a trade, and going through the emotions and how I control the emotions and don't let them control me for a trade, and to be consistently doing this every single day. Okay, well, it's time to lock in. The market is seriously moving this morning. 15-minute chart of NASDAQ. We're coming up to basically, I think that's pretty much all-time highs. ES is not quite there, but it's a previous high. And then also we have oil here is doing a pretty big sell-off, kind of just back down to this kind of support area. So I like it for a bounce off of this big move down. I would like a double bottom though to some extent. It does have news right here. So we'll see if that sets something up. Mainly, honestly, what I'm looking at is this NASDAQ move right now is pretty crazy. We've got news at 8. Not big news, honestly. The 8:30 is oil. These are, not West Coast times. And then FOMC is in a while. So this move will be done by then. So I just want to see if it kind of looks like it's going to reverse here at kind of 45 or 8 a.m. Kind of quick early morning reversal. See what happens. Just going to quickly let my room know what I'm thinking. I would prefer a 5-minute, but like big picture, this is a nice spot. I really like that we are at the all-time highs here. It is a lot of movement, strength, I mean. This is broken. But the main thing is that there's the fair value gap is basically saying, hey, it's super overextended. It's super overextended into, smaller chart, into that previous high. I mean, even a pullback down to like here somewhere is great. It's 54. This news coming out is, let's see, pull up this tool I have. let's see, it's wholesale inventories. So at top of the hour, wholesale inventories is not a big release, so it shouldn't really matter that much, and I can actually trade through the release. So that's kind of important to know. If this sets up beforehand, I can pretty much say I'll just get in anyway. So I might enter in the ES instead. This moved up a lot more. Which one is up? So the NASDAQ is up 0.8 this morning while the ES is up 0.6. So it's definitely moving more. But I would like to trade the weaker one because that's generally the better way to go. I need a little bit more of a pullback than this. Um, 2 minutes on the news. That's right there. I'm just trying to take. I do want to full size this actually because this is a really nice move at a good area. Gold actually looks strong. This is gold on a 15-minute. Gold looks like it's going to bottom. And it's somehow showing strength when the market is showing strength. And so I think that's kind of helpful for this. Okay, news is popping up after this candlestick here. Oil is still kind of doing its thing. I'm not really concerned about that right now. I'd rather focus on this. Comparing these two still, the NASDAQ is showing still more strength while the ES is showing more weakness. I do want to be aware that this could just pull back and continue to shoot higher. But again, I want to be aware that that's okay. I still want to jump in when a good signal shows up because it's at a good area that makes sense. You know, I don't know what the market's going to do, obviously. I just want to jump in when it makes sense. Like this is a nice little stab higher. NQ's actually making a new high. Wow. While the ES is not. So I think if NQ looks like it's gonna fail, that's what I want to jump in on. Like this, if this fails, like putting in an order below this low, because on a 5 minute, I think that would still look pretty good on a 5 minute. Because also big picture, if I pull up targets for this potential, I mean, it's the easy money would be giving this move back up, but then we could push lower to here, which would be like, this is 3x, this would be like 6x, which would be obviously a sick move. I don't think that's super likely, but wow, so that does look good. I do want to get in short if it, but right, like I think I want to get short here. It's just a little nerve-wracking with the NQ being But again, like that was a fast move up. So I'm nervous about this. But again, the reasons to get in are good. NASDAQ, it could have just got, you know, this could just be like a final push higher and that fails. This candlestick right here is pretty strong. It's just an attempt at a new high and then it's gonna fail. I would like to see how this does this kind of bottom here and then continue higher. But I think if the NASDAQ gives up, this is gonna push lower. So I think I'm gonna put in an order below this. It's a good setup. New high, lower high. Big picture is good. And I'm gonna put my stop above the highs. And I'm gonna manage accordingly. Nice failure there. Again, like the big thing is this could just come down and bottom and continue higher. So this point, just kind of let it do its thing. See how it plays out. Again, like this. Looking, even on a 5 minute, that's a nice 5 minute candle. But we'll see what it does. Also, if you're wondering what trading platform I'm using, it's called NinjaTrader. I've used it for over 5 years. It's amazing. I'll leave a link in the description below this video if you want to check it out. Okay, I think this is not gonna work because let's be honest, your trades never work. But it looks good. It looks good. In all reality, that's a nice little poke higher. Let's look at what gold looks good. Pray that gold goes up. That'll help. Oil, I don't like oil for, I suck at oil longs, honestly. And when I look at it, this is just, I think, FOMO over seeing this move. Really the sick entry was this bar right here and catch that move down. Otherwise, it was just not worth it. So I mean, like if it bounces, but it's got news in 20 minutes, so unlikely. Again, it's pretty nerve-wracking because there could be just a lot of strength here, and it could just continue up. But again, the main thing is it's all about just following your plan, because this doesn't have to work in every time. Even if it works 50% of the time and I get 2x or a little bit off 1x, like, it's great. And this still is setting up, it's still at a decision point. Not out of the woods, but I think ES looks good. I'm gonna sit on a 5 minute. See what that looks like. I'm gonna move it. It was not in a good spot, to be frank. The reason why I like it to be above the high, because if the market came up here and, like, let's say reversed right here, knocked me out, but then did a big bar down, I would still want to be in. But I would have been out of the trade. Like, it's not violated until it breaks up here. It can come up here and then do a failed breakout back, failed sell off back in, but usually that's unlikely. So this is not selling off quickly. I would say it doesn't look good. I think if this lower high here on the NASDAQ doesn't turn into head and shoulders and start going down, I'm going to want to get out. Because at that point it just looks like it's probably gonna continue higher. I'm just gonna go step away for a while because this is driving me a little crazy. And I think it's gonna not work out, even though NQ is actually making more lows. NQ looks better than the ES now, but this trading, you gotta sit here in the agony of indecision. I think because of it being kind of like this, once it gets to break even, or 1x, I think I'm gonna go break even. Unless it just gets moving quickly. This is when just looking at a bigger picture 5-minute chart just makes it way easier to drown out the noise of it looking good or looking bad. We're just looking for a push. Of course, the NASDAQ is now selling off better. Classic. You choose one and the other is better. Now I'll just turn this on for kicks. I want to move to break even now because if it just shoots up after that, I'm just gonna get out. Like, just get me out of that. I'm gonna take off 2x for sure down here if it just blips lower. Yeah, just that's a nice start. It could totally just reverse up after that though. Would it suck to just get out at break even? Yeah. After all that. But as a part of trading. Like I'm looking for this move. It has stabbed through most of this move already, which is kind of rough. But I can also, if it starts to slow down, I'll trail a little bit. Like I'll trail previous candlestick. I'm just gonna give it a minute here and see. Gotta manage my stupid recording pages. Okay, I'm going to trail with 2 with the previous candlestick. It looks like it's just gonna basically not get knocked out. Oof. I really want to pull this down. It literally just almost blipped it. Okay, it filled that. My computer's literally lagging. Okay. I'm moving the rest down here. It's a 2x. I want to give it some room, but also like I'm not going to give it, you know, crazy room here. There we go. That's fine room right there. I'm gonna give it this candlestick because it's clearly NQ hasn't even given the move back up. Big picture, pulling up the 15-minute chart again just to see where we're at. Again, the easy money is kind of over. But I don't, so it's like I'm giving it some room, but also like I'm not gonna give it like one, a crazy amount. Like this is the move I'm really looking for. I'm not really looking for this. Like that's more if it just rips lower. You know. Sick trade. That just came out of nowhere. I was not expecting that to happen. After this chop, I was like, I'm screwed. I've lost for the day. Well, okay. Okay, so the market has been open for 15 minutes here. And looking at the NASDAQ futures and the ES futures, the NASDAQ has a pretty good uptrend in place as well with the ES. And so I would say there isn't really great constructive support levels. You know, we might come down here and bounce. It looks like we're kind of selling off right now. But if you look at both of them, we had a really nice move up yesterday and a sell off. But right now it's just kind of chopping in this bigger sideways trend still. NASDAQ has broken out a little bit more. So it's definitely looking on the bullish side overall, but also kind of weak at the same time. And so in my eyes, that's kind of just indecision. And so it makes me less likely to want to touch it. Gold here is having a, kind of zoomed out on a 15, is having a big move up here. It's kind of been chopping around for a while, but now it's had a big move yesterday, and this morning it's having a second one, and going down to a 5-minute. Like this is a nice uptrend that I would love to try and short. But the problem is if we zoom out to like a 30, there's just not a great level that it's at yet. You know, I'd love if it was popping up here. There it's, kind of had some chop, and there's some previous tops over here, but it's still just not great. And so I'll look at it and see, watch it and see, okay, well, does it set up a really nice, clean looking, like double top kind of situation where I can at least catch a move down to here, especially like maybe on a 1-minute chart if it looks like it'll reverse a little quicker. And then oil is just kind of crappy looking. It's just kind of in the middle of the zone. Maybe if it pops down to here, but at the moment its current trend is just kind of just a sloppy downtrend. That's not interesting. I want to see something overextended and, popping up a bunch of fair value gap indicators on like a 50-minute chart. Like oil, gold here. That was a 30-minute technically, but again, very one directional, getting overextended. It's gonna have to have a pullback at some point. That's the main thing. There's also some news 30 minutes after the market opens. In terms of severity, it says it's orange. I think this one actually is Richmond Manufacturing Index is actually green from my sheet, so theoretically it's not that big of a deal, but it will be up here in like 10 minutes. So I'm kind of waiting to see if we can get a reversal in the NASDAQ. I think that's kind of the biggest option at the moment, especially after this. Reversing off of that, because we're just kind of in a sideways range. There's also this low. They're not great lows to be reversing off of because we haven't like tested it multiple times. But with these early morning reversals, sometimes that's all you need. And so I'm okay watching that and taking a quick stab on those on a 1-minute chart. Okay, this has sold off really fast on the NASDAQ, and Generally when this happens, it could V bottom and I'll totally miss it. But also, we've broken below this low I like. We could totally get a failed breakout here. But I want to see, if I'm going to take a long, I need to see how it comes up and tests this level. Because otherwise it could just come up here and keep selling off. And when there's this much momentum in this case, you don't want to just try and jump in long out of the fear that, oh, there's, a ton of this crazy move down and I can, catch the whole swing up kind of thing. That's not what we're looking for. I didn't get long on this initial candle because it just needs to kind of break with the overall bullishness or bearishness happening. I almost need like a higher low here. Even though this is technically a higher low, just having a little bit more confirmation would be good. The sizing here isn't great for half size. I'll probably double the contracts to go like 600 risk, which would end up being like 700. But I mean, overall, like, just doesn't look great. And this is how you weed out crappy or not great trades when you're unsure. But if this comes down here and pops up, I want to get long. And I think I want to get long 2 contracts because that's what I was just looking for, and I think that's a good enough confirmation. I'll be nervous about it because I'm a little back and forth on the read, but I think this is a good spot to jump in long because of this double bottom we have. We've hit a low from, I think this is a couple days ago, kind of Friday. And so we are in long. I'm just going to pull my stop up below this double bottom. And I'm probably just going to go for 2x here. Just because the market is pretty choppy. I'm just going to switch up this indicator here. I'm kind of having some issues with it lately, just to show my actual risk and profit. So I'm smaller size than normal, kind of half size, mainly because this was a pretty bearish move, and the level is it's like kind of like the first retest. But what I like is we have these fair value gap indicators on a 5-minute, and the timing with 8 o'clock reversal is pretty solid, and then a double bottom here. And so I think it looks good for a nice move up. And I'm only gonna go for 2x just because of this bearishness that we're having. Also, I've been sleeping like crap, so I just won't be making as good decisions potentially. This is just a pullback. I'm probably gonna have to hold through. I mean, I think with the way this trend is, it needs to have this double bottom and then some kind of fake lower. Once this kind of breaks up here, I think to break to 1x here, I'll probably move here and maybe break even if this really looks like it's going to start to get going. Just because I think this is a really nice constructive setup now, and I think it's probably going to rip back up here, or it's going to come up here at 50% here and and continue lower with the big picture bearishness taking into a play. And, you know, again, I'm just looking for this quick reversal in the morning. And I don't want to put risk on the table if it's just going to not really do what I want it to do. I will say this does not look great. Part of me wants to move my stop up here, take the risk off, because we haven't had a fast bounce. And it seems like the downtrend could pick up, but also in terms of big picture 5 minute, we can still totally come down here and bounce. I got a 5 minute on there, 5 minute on here. I mean, like, it would still be totally intact. And then if I got out at break even and I saw a bullish candlestick form right here, I'd be like, oh, I wish I was in that, because it set up a very clean double bottom on a 5 minute. And so I just have to, even though I'm feeling that doubt and nervousness, because it is kind of choppy, I'm just going to hold, and because the main big picture of the trade isn't violated yet. Is there the risk that it goes down? Yes. And I lose? Yes. But I don't want to get out because I'm nervous when there's no real market reason to get out. You know, risk reward is there, and the big picture of moving up and giving back that snap down we had from the market open is totally possible. And so, you know, I think once we break, this is pretty much like a little double top right here. Once we break that, I will move to break even at that point, because at that point it's had its pullback that it should have in an uptrend, and I'll want to get out at that point. But right now it's just had, this is the first push higher, and it could continue higher after a pullback. Like a NASDAQ here made a new high versus the ES actually didn't. It basically made a double top. So just kind of waiting for that to play out. And that's kind of the hard part about trading. Okay, we're getting a pop here. So I'm going to move to break even now. Sometimes I would move to this low, but if it pulls back off of that, I'm just going to get out. NASDAQ is similar. The 5 minutes, like this is the 5 minute pullback I was looking for. Like, I would have still wanted to been in if I got scared and got out there. You know, the trade wasn't violated. With the way the market is, it could still just pull back and knock me out at break even. But again, just managing it. I don't know what's going to happen. I would love to take 2x, but we'll just have to see. So as this gets going here and I get close to this 2x target, I'm going to, especially once we get up to here, like once we start getting a candle up here, up to this price somewhere, I'm going to move my stop loss up pretty aggressively, because there's no point in letting it come up here and then rip all the way back down, right? I'd rather just try and get 2x at the most, but if it's just going to come up here and pull back, I'd rather just get out at like 1.5, because this is a big move up in, you know, a quick move to give this back up, which is great, but it's been kind of a slow market, and so this could really just reverse anytime now at this point. It looks really good to keep going higher, but again, big picture, 50% pullback is, based on this, is just this dot right here is literally right here on the NASDAQ. So we're at the 50%, and ES is past the 50%. So I would love for this to keep going higher, and I think if that's gonna happen, it's got this tight trend that it's gonna hold. And so I'm gonna move up actually to 1x here. I really almost don't want to, because I don't want it to come down here, knock me out, and keep going higher. But in terms of managing it tightly and having this more fixed risk reward of, well, I only have a little bit more profit to make. There's no point in, you know, risking essentially $1,000 to make, you know, another $400. That's kind of how the math adjusts as your trade goes. And so I don't want to give all that back up. And it doesn't make sense math-wise. And so hopefully it holds this, but again, it looks like it could just have a pullback here. And you know, I could have it down here, but you know what? I'm still happy if I get 1x on a trade. It's a long, which is harder to play. It was half size, so I wasn't really super confident in it to begin with. And so I can be super bummed, but I'll be a little bummed just because it does look good. But again, it's given back a lot of the move, and it's not, the market's just not acting great in terms of strength. NASDAQ here, that's a little bit nicer of a bottom to hold. But again, like, I think this is, ES is gonna hold this and keep going higher if it's gonna hold. But this uptrend is already kind of broken. So 5-minute NASDAQ just looks cleaner. But again, this is where I'm at. Okay, out for 700. Still happy about it. Still a nice trade. You know, jumped in smaller size because of how I felt about it. And you know, if it just shoots lower here, I will be very happy that I got out. You know, I don't want to play this struggle game of waiting for it to continue higher slowly over and over time. Not every day is going to be, you know, amazing. Follow your strategy. Go with what your read is. That's all you can do.
And so make sure to download that 14-page free candlestick patterns guide in the link in the description of this video, or with this QR code right here. It'll really help you consistently execute this strategy and show you more patterns that I use to enter in on other than the quick ones I just went through.